Welcome, everyone. It's the Mike Tech Show, show number 938. Tonight, I have a great email story. I have remote system migration. Going to talk about SSL for a website and the journey and the steps I had to go through for that for a client. And then it was just going to be a simple firewall crash story, but it has led to multiple servers, and my son and my grandson are on site right now as I record it, with a catastrophe happening right now with one of our biggest clients. So I'll fill you up more on that, and I could be interrupted if it sounds like there's a little pause or a break. That's because I had to take the phone, and they're working on that, and that's the server room got flooded, and I'm going to explain. So much to talk about, and tonight, tomorrow I'm getting ready. As a matter of fact, if you are watching this on YouTube, you'll see I'm in my Phillies hat and a Phillies shirt because it is now baseball season. So this Sunday is the first home game for the Philadelphia Phillies, and this is the main reason I am in Florida. When my wife and I were looking for a place in Florida years ago, I can't believe I'm going to be here almost 5 years. Well, one of the things was it had to be close to Baycare Ballpark in Clearwater, and I am literally 15 minutes away from there. And my wife needed to be 15 minutes away from a beach. So that is why I am where I'm at in Florida. And I was going to say March, but man, they pushed the season up a week. So spring training literally starts this weekend. They have a road game on Saturday, and then the first home game is Sunday, and I can't wait. You know how I feel about baseball and the Phillies, and man, just coming off a Super Bowl win for the Eagles, and we just roll into baseball. So very cool, and can't wait. Pick up son number 1 tomorrow at the airport. We got lots of plans and lots of games next week, and then the following weekend, son number 2 comes down, and we continue and go to more games. So, all right. So let's begin with a referral that I got on last Friday. So Friday, I get an email that this person was referred by one of my clients who's an attorney. And she's not an attorney, but we're going to, protect their identity, obviously, but I'm going to describe the problem. They were hacked. At some point, their email got compromised a few days before, and they changed passwords, and things got resolved, or so they thought, and no mail was being able to be received by anyone. So the email, and I think I mentioned this, maybe they contacted me on Thursday. That's right. And I think I mentioned this on last week's show. Yes, because I have a bunch of emails that I'm going to interject with this story. So let me tell you what happened. And I checked the DNS, and remember I said everything looked good because I seen a DKIM, I seen an SPF. I didn't see a DMARC, but the MX record was absolutely fine. They are a Microsoft 365 client, and their email, when they send it, they don't get anything rejected or back, but it never gets delivered. Weird. And I tried a bunch of things. I went looking over the weekend, and I thought I had it because I thought the DNS changes were going to take care of everything, and they didn't. So I started poking around more and more. I'm going to get to a couple emails here, which I really should. And we're going to start with Kate. I heard you say you checked all the email records and those are correct. But have you checked to see if somehow the IP address is blacklisted? And yes, it was blacklisted, their website. But that's not referencing email, but I thought it still could be related. And that was a great idea that Kate sent me. This happened to one of my clients once. Took me about half a day to track down the problem. He was sending emails to like 65 addresses, and the ISP decided it was spam and blacklisted the IP. A colleague had this happen because IPs are shared or some darn thing, and it wasn't even him. Yes, for spamming, and it somehow gets blocked. Yes, and here's why. You are guilty until proven innocent. If you are DHCP from your internet provider and you are on a blacklist, it could be because you're just part of a subnet that's being that they were spamming. So it's not even your fault, and you're being blocked like by Barracuda spam filtering or something. So now with that you got to get a static IP. So if you're a business, you get and that takes care of it. So yes, and we were on a phone call with their hosting company for their website, and they kind of didn't really help us, too much. And so I was kind of, all right, they convinced us, it is Microsoft, and it's true. It was Microsoft. So if they were doing the email, that would be different. So we're not going to get to the solution yet until I read a couple more emails. So this is from Jerry. I heard your podcast tonight, the email that can't send email. Could you check to see what kind of Microsoft account is selected for the email account? And could the email account be a distribution group? That's a great idea. Actually, a very, very good idea. And I found that they have Microsoft Business 365 Business Standard, which has full email with them. There's only a couple people, and by the way, both of them run into the same problem. So that was one of the things I even sent back to Jerry. Hey, their web IP is on a blacklist, their DKIM is incorrect, and the DMARC is missing. That wasn't it. So when I was working with the client, I said, let me open up a ticket with Microsoft, and said, I will loop you in when they call me back. They called me within 10 minutes. I clicked the support icon in the admin of Office 365, and they got back to me like very, very fast. And we went over a bunch of things from the admin portal. And we used, the first time I used Quick Assist with Microsoft, and they've added that to Windows 11. I forget what update, but so I started doing I'm chatting with the tech, and I'm gonna give him props. So his name was Dixon, and he very, very good. And we started doing traces, and we discovered something. When we did a trace of all of their sent messages, they were failed delivery. I'm like, well, what's failing it? That means Microsoft's failing it. And this is the only thing that bothered me. We discovered that because of they had so many messages going out, Microsoft shut down sending. Now, why didn't a message pop up? Well, it appears they did send messages. We went to Outlook Web Access for the main user. There was a rule in there that deleted every NDR. Every non-delivery message was deleted so it wouldn't be delivered to the user. Once we got rid of that rule and my client sent some messages, because now I've looped her in on the call, she would get the report. Every time she would send the message, she would get the report. And so now in the chat, Steve says, so why was the rule set? The bad actor set that rule. So they wouldn't know that messages weren't being delivered because they were spamming and they didn't want to see anything. They didn't want the user to know that their account was taken over to do spam. So now remember, my user, they reset their passwords, and they reset the passwords for everything. And I'm so glad they did that before they even reached out to me. But now it takes an hour for Microsoft, after they feel satisfied that it's been taken care of. And one of the things that they made us do, and this is where I didn't understand, they already had multi-factor authentication, but we had to force it within the user section for active users. And then you go multi-factor authentication, had to go down and make sure it was forced for the users. And now, once that was done, he could then submit to have Microsoft stop blocking it. They said it would be an hour. It was an hour. So we spent a lot of time on the phone doing a lot. I was surprised that there was no message visible. Sometimes when an account, I've seen this before, when someone's been compromised and they were sending out spam, it wasn't their fault, and there was a message under that user that would say that you can't send messages. So I'm surprised there wasn't something on the portal notifying us that they were doing that, or I would have known exactly what was going on. So we cleaned up, we double checked everything. There was a connector that was added that I didn't recognize and he didn't recognize, and it's like, boom, gone. So we did a good cleanup of their account on everything that we could that's hosted by Microsoft. And now everything, knock wood, is great. Not only is my client ecstatic, they asked to be a regular retainer client. So I sent a contract over and my invoice for the time spent on that, and then block of hours, the whole shebang. And and they've referred me to a friend who's starting up a business. So it just keeps getting better and better on this one. So I just wanted to go over everything to kind of trigger things to look at if you're trying to do something like this. That is, things to think about. So now, can't make this up. A system that we were doing a cutover for the weekend, and we were scheduled, and Wednesday we had our pre-call, and this is a user who has 3 monitors and they're in another state, and I'll say, I'll say they're in Maine, and they were a client of mine in the area in Pennsylvania, and then they moved up to Maine and running their business out of their home office in Maine. And they needed a Windows 11 system because the system's old, but it's taken so long to schedule this migration. I mean, it's just literally over a year. Now, the difference for the monitors from the one Dell Optiplex to the other, they have 2 DVIs and a display port, because the video cards were DVI display port, and there's 2 of them. And now the new one, it's all display port. So the monitor only has DVI and VGA. So all I need is an adapter to go from the DVI cable to the display port. I did send those adapters. Client couldn't find them. So I'm like, okay, look, let's start and let's go on Amazon and have them, you should be getting them before, the end of the weekend. So 2 adapters we ordered. This is Wednesday night, mind you. So now comes Friday. I use Fab's Auto Backup remotely to start transferring everything. We had a cutoff at 5 o'clock. The user was done. And now it takes a few hours for everything to be copied. Everything's copied. We had it set, and I made sure all the updates were done on the new system. So both systems were up at the same time. I'm on the new system, making sure everything's set. Malwarebytes is activated. Just all the updates that could possibly be done. Now, my son is scheduled Saturday morning to do a FaceTime for the user to swap out the systems. And it's not easy for this person, but my son, lots of patience, made it very easy. And we just hooked up one monitor because the cables weren't going to come until Sunday. So we're like, okay, no problem. We'll hook this up on Sunday. So now on Saturday, I begin Fab's restore and get everything restored and start configuring everything to make sure it's perfect. Making sure QuickBooks is up and activated and can, she uses some remote access for her bookkeeper to be able to connect. And it's actually my bookkeeper too. So I knew how to get everything set up. Set that up. Now the cables we're waiting on. Sunday, she gets the message, it's all delayed, the cables. And she says, well, there is a lot of snow coming. So wherever you're at, whatever you think snow, they were getting 24 inches. So it's Monday and the cables are still delayed and she's going crazy. She needs her 3 monitors. So I have my son overnight 2 adapters, paid a ridiculous amount of money to overnight them so Tuesday morning she would get them. Guess what? Weather delay. Can't get it delivered. So it was amazing. So eventually Tuesday night, Amazon delivers the 2 cables. So we get Tuesday night, we get the I call her and we talk and connect it up in 10 minutes and she's up and running. So I think Wednesday afternoon, the R cables that we sent finally arrived. So I told her, look, hang on to them. You may need them for an adapter for something. So that was the story that I wanted to talk about. Okay. SSL. CPA firms need secure ways of sharing files. So everybody has a different, it's Citrix file share. Well, there's a file share dedicated with the program CCH where you have a website, and that website has to have an SSL certificate. Now, here's where I don't understand. For network solutions, I made sure last year that we bought the SSL for 2 years, but it seems like you have to apply it every year. So on Monday, they were getting calls. Users were trying to send files securely via the file share link on the website that's maintained by the software company. Nope. So I have to have them regenerate a CSR. I have to go in and reactivate the SSL at Network Solutions and then put that CSR, and they sent me wrong info because it didn't authenticate properly. There was a problem with that CSR. So now I had to go back to them. They sent me another CSR. Now I get the zip file. Now the zip file I have to send them securely. And so I use their secure link that they have for sending files. I send the file, but they don't do the applying the SSL only on Tuesday nights. So Wednesday morning, I was lucky and that was all fixed. Now, story for Monday. And my son and my grandson are on site right this minute as I record. The first thing that happened was the Untangle firewall died. When they came in Monday morning, there was no internet, no. So on what I did, there is an on-site IT person, and then my son and I also help and do work for them. And he's on site, or I'm on site when I'm in Pennsylvania every Wednesday. And then we're called in anytime they need help for things. Well, we quickly, since it was the Untangle firewall that I believe was just the drive that went bad, we installed and set up just the default Verizon router, which wasn't hooked up, but was sitting by literally for this kind of a problem. So we just had to make sure the IP addresses were correct. Now it's not doing all of the VPN work that we need and some of the other things for remote access and stuff. So there were, at least they had internet and phones. I had to find the drive. It was a SATA M2, a very weird, short drive. And my son was on site, took it apart, took a picture of it. And I was like, okay. So I ordered two of the drives. Well, yesterday in the morning, we made, because the drives didn't come till Wednesday. So yesterday morning, we activated and started rebuilding the Untangle, but we didn't put it in place until the end of the day. We do that last night. I do a restore, and let me tell you, anybody, if you have an Untangle or Arista, as they're now called, it's free to have the config backed up in the cloud every night, and I have that on and activated, and I am so glad because I was able to easily restore the config, because the config is very, very complex. So had no problem getting that back online. Just had to have the drive, and I didn't want to go through that again, trying to find a drive. So that's why we bought two. Now they're up and running. My son texts me this morning. They have an emergency, and they have a problem. And there's two main servers. There's server 1, which runs their ERP system, and then server 2 is really just for file storage, and it's a real server. Well, server 2 went down, and they found there was some wet, and it looked like just a little bit of a leak. They looked like they clearly didn't take care of it, but they thought they took care of it. And one of the RAM sticks, well, actually two of them were bad. And went bad, and there was kind of a dampness on top of the server and stuff. So they got it up and running. So a couple hours, got it up and running. I get an emergency text literally an hour, not even an hour before I was starting the show tonight. The ceiling in the data center collapsed over the water with the water. I hope my son takes some pictures of this. Anyway, they're going through right now. The main server won't boot up. There's water. He said it's so bad. He says there's dead mice all over the place that must have been in the ceiling that came down into it. This is just horrible. And you have the maintenance guy, the one IT guy, my son, my grandson, all working on this, trying to get everything back up and running. And it looks like one of the casualties is the main server. That's not good. That's a problem because it's an old server that for a while, but there's always been delays, is supposed to be migrated to a brand new server. That's a story for another time. Anyway, this is real bad, and I'll probably be following up on this next week. Now, this is a problem because my son is going to be down here, so we got to work with the IT person to make sure, whatever still is left open, we got to make sure, that we take care of that. I have a lot more. So I'm doing a migration right now as we speak from an old Synology that's on the network to external drives. And I purchased, and this is a Mac, and this is one of those high-end studio Macs, that was just a 128 gig of RAM and just 8 terabyte drive. The user is a photographer, and we're always having massive storage issues in trying to save everything. So we finally decided, actually her husband, who is the CEO of one of our other clients. So we're talking about this, and he buys a 3 20 terabyte drives in an array where you could put 5 drives. And it's a USB-C connected directly to the Mac. I have it set up, and I'll tell you why I do this. It's a RAID 0, so it just looks like 60 terabytes. I am now in the process, because the user's traveling this weekend, and I am transferring the one storage drive, the other storage drive, and I'm going to transfer everything from the Synology, which was very old stuff that was used years ago when I needed a place to collect. They had like 10 or 15 computers throughout they have a huge house, and there was systems that were put aside from years, and they wanted the data off everything. And I remember, I probably talked about this a few years ago, where we took every drive, transferred all the files, and then set them up on the Synology. And there's other files on the Synology, but we're moving away from all of that and getting everything in this 60 terabyte drive to make it very easy for the user. So how do we back it up? Well, this is where I am going to use MagnusBox, because I got to get this backed up to the cloud. And they have a Mac client, and I have been using this, as you know, for years and years, and I love MagnusBox. And, hey, if you mention, you go over to magnusbox.com, contact them to become a partner and start, using that for backups. Tell them you heard it on the Mike Tech Show. Give me some credit. Tell them you heard it here, and you will love it. You won't look back. I've had disasters, which I've talked about, with client disasters, where MagnusBox saved the day by me being able to retrieve the data. So this is a 60 terabyte drive, and I've just about calculated how many terabytes right now. It's going to be probably 12 to 15 terabytes. I thought it was going to be about 20, but it's going to be about 15 terabytes. And it's reasonably priced for me to be able to resell it and still make money. And that's what we're going to do. And I'll be setting that up after we get everything over and set. And then, that'll take quite a few days to seed, for just backups for the uplink. Luckily, I'm trying to think. No, it's Comcast at this location, so the uplink isn't that fast. So it's going to take even longer. So I want to read an email and then tell you about how I actually did this based on Jason. And Jason Miller, you may know him from appearing on the shows with Marvin B, the Uncle Marv Business Podcast. So, and I've met Jason a few times at different conferences. He writes to me and says, Mike, I know you use Synchro as an RMM, and I'm unsure if you had that on the computer that had the local user and admin user locked out or not. Well, I did, and I never thought of this, and I can't believe it. I feel very, very stupid in not realizing this. He continues, but if you do have that on the same computer, you can open a command prompt from your RMM and do a net user command on the admin user and reset the password that way. If you don't have an RMM on computers like that, we use a program called Active Password Changer, and it works really well to reset passwords on pretty much any Windows computer. Jason, that is phenomenal. He goes on talking about an email migration that I'm still going through, so I'm saving the rest of his email for as I go to talk about that down the road. So just wanted to follow up with that, because now as I come back, I had a user literally last night that locked themselves out. And I opened the command prompt, created a new admin account, set the password, and then added them to the administrator. You can do this all from the command line, from the net user command line. Did this and logged in, and then was able to reset his password and change it. I can't believe it, Jason, that your timing on this answer, and I'm like, I got to get it out there. This was like on my notes. This was like one of the first notes I said, okay, when I get to emails, I have to cover this because it's so important. And the fact that last night I used it, that was great and was a hero with my client. So thank you for that. I have an email from who's Pup on Tech, and he replied, remember last week I talked about the SFC scan now and the DISM. He says, just a heads up, something I learned from an older tech who has been doing this for many years. Before running SFC/scan now, always run DISM/online/cleanup image/restore health. Only afterwards should you run SFC scan now, as SFC tends not to find anything until you run the DISM command above. I don't know why that order matters, but based on my experience working on a computer at a computer repair shop and running these hundreds of times, it does. As always, love the show, and thanks for all your help with last week's show. I haven't had a chance to implement anything, but hopefully this coming week. Very glad. Thank you for sharing that, and it was great to mention that again to just to cover this. So I have an article, and Carlos, who's not only a longtime listener, but I've met Carlos, so we went to a baseball game. I've actually used him to help a client down here when I was back in Pennsylvania. So he has a repair shop in the area. So I want to show you the link, and let me share that right now. And there we go. It's actually the first link for tonight's show is the MCSoft blog, exploring LOL bins, the growing threat hiding in plain sight. And I am really glad he shared this with me. And I'm not going to read the article. I think you should. It's worth doing. What are LOL bins? It's living off the land binaries. LOL bins are essentially native system executables found within operating systems, primary Windows, but also Mac OS and Linux, that can be leveraged for malicious purposes. These tools are typically used for administrative tasks, system diagnostics, or system installation. For example, WMIC.exe, that's the Windows Management instrumentation command line is a legitimate tool for system administrators, allowing administrators to gather system information or execute commands. What they're saying is there's been an uptick of these being compromised so that someone can come back in, execute it, and take over the machine or do bad things. So read this article. I think it's very, very, very important. Now, another link that I want to share, but this is bad, and you got to be very careful in implementing this because it's not secure. Windows 11, 24H2, and insecure guest login settings. So what has happened is people who have a peer-to-peer network, and now they introduce a 24H2 on the Windows 11. Now, if you have if you check the box, to not have a secure accounts or password protected account in order to access a share, well, Windows 11 no longer listens to that and blocks it. That's why you're not connecting. That's why you're having problems. That's why I'm having problems with a couple clients. And the answer here is explained. There's a background, they say, your situation here. And the way to do it, there's two ways. Enable an insecure guest logins via group policy, or go right to the registry editor and create a key. Now remember, consider alternative security measures. Instead of enabling insecure guest logins, consider setting up password protected sharing for better security. Ensure that all users have appropriate permissions to access the necessary shares. But if you are running into this and you do want to bypass it, then this is something that you definitely, want to take a look at, but beware of the cautions here. It is less secure. It is why Microsoft has turned that off. Frustrating, but I get it. Okay. Let's go back and let me see. Do I have everything covered? I do. Okay. So that is it for tonight. A lot of info. Remember, check out the podcast, the video on YouTube, and that's at Michael Smith MTS at YouTube, and you can get to all the videos I posted up every week right after the show. And email me. Keep emailing me. I like I said, I have a couple emails that I'm still going to cover next week. Anybody that sent me an email today, it didn't make the show, but it will next week. And then I'll also update on the email migration and the great tips from Jason. So that'll be next week's show. Email me, miketechshow@gmail.com. Don't forget Fab's Auto Backup. You heard me. I love it. I use it all the time. And also, don't forget, hit the, if you want to make a donation, it's in the show notes of every show. It's a way for me to keep the lights on and help support the show. And I just had to renew all the hosting and everything. And let me tell you, I'll put it to good use. And I really appreciate all your help and support. That's it. Thank you. And I'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Bye-bye.